to Living Unapologetically Beyond the Uniform. I'm your host, Renea Jones-Hudson, and I am thrilled to have you with me today. This podcast is dedicated to all the incredible women who have served and are now navigating their transition to civilian life. So, whether you're beginning this journey or have been on it for a while, this show is for you. Today, I am honored to have with me Miss Anisa Palmer. She is a combat veteran, an award winning nonprofit leader, and the visionary behind I Will Survive Incorporated. Anisa's journey from military service to advocating for health equity and supporting breast cancer survivors is truly amazing. And I myself am happy to know this beautiful, beautiful soul. So today we will dive into her story and hear more about her impactful work. All right, Miss Anisa, before we dive into the details of your work, though, I would love for our listeners to hear more about your story in your own words. Can you tell us about yourself and where you're from?
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here, Renee. Honored to serve, grateful to be a veteran, but it all starts in the Virgin Islands in St. Croix, where I'm originally from. I went through the battle of losing my mom to breast cancer. Fast forward, post military, I'm here serving almost 14 years, running boots on ground, different uniform, but truly honored to serve.
I love that. I love that. Definitely, definitely inspiring. So, so let's start with that defining moment. Your journey from combat veteran to breast cancer advocate. What was the turning point that made you realize that this was your mission, like to dedicate your life to health equity and supporting those affected by breast cancer?
I witnessed my mom struggle in her battle with breast cancer, and I didn't really understand all the nuances that she was going through at the time. I was only 5 years old. And
Mhm.
so, in that very fresh, naive eyes, trying to identify what is going on with mom. Why is her hair falling out? Why is she missed dinner? Why do I not see her here? I did not go to her with appointments. I was too young. My older
Yeah.
sister went with her with some. We were traveling to Puerto Rico, to NIH in the mainland in the States. And so long periods of time in between treatments. And her doctors gave her a 6 month, pretty much, time of death, that she would not make it. She was diagnosed with invasive stage 4 breast cancer that metastasized to her lungs, unfortunately. She was adopted. We didn't know family history.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, before we knew second and third hand smoke exposure, her adopted parents both smoked. So she was at higher risk not only to get diagnosed with breast cancer, but also because it metastasized to the weakest organ in the body, her lungs, being exposed from such a young age all the
Yeah.
way 30s. Unfortunately, had that major effect on her lungs.
Man, I can only, you know, I can only imagine that experience as a child. You're seeing all of this happening, but you're not really fully understanding. You know it's not good, but you don't know how bad it is either, right? And then to feel helpless as a child, just witnessing all of this. So, kudos to you, your strength and everything, and for all that you're doing. I am completely like inspired by you. I don't know if you know that, but I try to, really encourage and empower people in doing the thing that drives them. And I'm witnessing you doing that, and it's truly, truly inspiring. So I love that for you. I love everything that you're doing. So, with that, you founded I Will Survive Incorporated, right? And so I'm guessing that's in honor of your mother's courageous battle with breast cancer. How has your mother's legacy shaped your work, and what do you hope people take away from her story and your mission?
Yes, absolutely. Definitely in honor of my mom, continuing the legacy, and finding the research initially first was Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, and the Bahamas had the
Mm.
highest mortality rates of breast cancer. And so, not being from the Bahamas, not having the background of footprint, didn't make sense to move there and start, but Georgia made sense. And so
Okay.
I have my undergrad at Georgia State University. And so there's a lot of Fortune 500 companies. Something has to be funded here. Although I didn't really know what I was doing, Georgia made sense. And so in Fulton and DeKalb County, predominantly, we serve the most, greatest need, and unfortunately the highest mortality rate as well within the counties in the Metro Atlanta area. I hope that people take away from this, prevention is key, number one, and then early detection. If prevention is not an option, sometimes there's family history, genetics are take a place with diagnosis, and so if we do find it early, your increased survival rate is 90% or more. And that's what we'd love to see. I think for my mother's case specifically, they found it at a later stage, and we hope that's never the case for anyone that we are able to serve.
Yeah. You talk about the mortality rate here. And, with both of us being from the islands, like this weekend, I'm going home to bury my aunt. She died from lung cancer. And, that's one of the things, it's not as, we're doing a lot to educate people and, just encourage them to take more precautions and all of that. And it's not as, what's the word, like, the resources are not as available. I mean,
Yeah,
you're having to do research here where we have a broader reach. And just think about those islands, and trying to impact people there. So, maybe maybe this would go so global that you can reach those people as well, just to educate them at least, because prevention is key. And we know that. So thank you again for all that you're doing, and just for, just how much you're impacting a lot of lives. So let's shift gears a little bit. So as a veteran, you've had to embody resilience and adaptability. You know this all too well. So how has being in the military influenced how you tackle challenges in your advocacy work, and, especially with you trying to serve underserved communities?
absolutely. I am so grateful for my short military career. In that short time frame, I was able to grab and hold on to different keys and skills that I keep in my back pocket every day. And so the first thing is always kind of see a hole, fill a hole,
Yeah.
not duplicating services. If there's an opportunity that, one organization or a government entity does not fill, filling that need. And so for us, when we first started, it was prevention. No one was talking about prevention. And for me coming, from the islands, it makes sense,
Mhm.
where you have sunlight and you're getting natural vitamin D every day and you're going swimming, so you're getting that physical activity to reduce all health disparities, you know, where you're eating all the great food and the fresh produce, and might have
Yeah.
sour salt once a week, and it's a natural
Right.
anti-killer. And so if you're incorporating these things, I'm like, yeah, there's just no way. And then you move to the mainland of the States, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's toxins in the water and toxins in
Yes.
the air, environment, and all the research organizations that are out there in the United States and some the globe does not do a lot of environmental risks of cancer. Canada and the European Union is doing a lot more, and so they have where they're banning a lot of things, a lot of chemicals that are approved within this country in the United States, which is really unfortunate. Um, we have a lot of work to do.
Yes, definitely. I do agree with you with the Europeans. They've really taken the health piece of their citizens into, and I'll speak for Netherlands because I spent about a month there, maybe a year or two ago, and I was very impressed with how the government just took hold of the culture, just the health culture for their citizens. I was really, really impressed with that. And Anisa is really a super soldier. She is so modest. She will not say that, but we we spoke on a few occasions, and I'm like, oh yeah, this was a super soldier for real, and you and I have spoken about your military career and how far you've wanted to go with that, and but because of this mission here that you really, like you said, you didn't know where it was going to go. Ha- has has there been any point where you're like, I wish I could have, or I wish this, and not so much in a negative way, because even though I'm retired, there are many aspects of the military that I miss, like truly, especially we used to do esprit de corps, just the everybody gathering, especially with us islands, all the islanders, it's like we tend to find each other. But has there been like at any point where you're in that state, you're like, man, I wish I could have, or in any at any time, and
Absolutely.
how do you get over that? How do you like work through that?
Yes, no, this is really great, Renee, because I think initial separation, I struggled heavily on did I do the right thing? It's in the middle of the recession. It's 2010, and everyone's like, you're not going to be able to find a job. And I shared only a few, with a few people what my goals were and why this was so important to me. And I remember sitting down with my lieutenant commander, like, Palmer, we need you. You can stay wherever you'd like, trying to make calls and requests to move me wherever I wanted to go.
Yeah,
But no, I have to do this. This is a mission that is greater than serving in the military. This is purpose.
yeah,
And for me, I didn't really know all of what it encompassed at the time, but I had to answer the call. I'm
yeah,
grateful that I did, because we have been able to support over 4,000 families over the past almost 14 years that we're coming up on now. And I look back and think if we didn't exist, those families would still be homeless, going through homelessness while fighting cancer, uh,
yes,
house going into foreclosure because they're struggling with medical bills and trying to, figure out who's going to pay all these bills with treatments and losing jobs and husbands, unfortunately, that left their wives while they were battling,
yeah,
children that struggled in the school system without mom helping if they didn't have a guidance counselor in school to help. All these barriers that took place, and looking back, and it's like, wow, we're really making an impact in the communities.
yeah. Yeah, that it can be tough. We know what transitioning is like. Some of us can do it well or have done it well, and there are some of us, who struggle or are still struggling to make that transition. What I like that you said, at least before you got out, you had a sense of purpose. You had that thing that was pulling you to do something. And unlike you, I did not have that. I found my purpose after. And I say that because it's not to say that you won't find it, one of the things I do think we don't surrender enough to just the process, to what we're going through. And I think and I would ask your opinion on this too. I think, in my opinion, I think why so many of us struggle is because of that always want, I have to be doing something. I can't just be sitting still. I need to do, and it's because of how we were programmed in the military. We have a mission. All of this need to get done. What is your take on that? How do you how is your experience with that?
Absolutely. So for me, I missed the fact that I was inaccessible in certain deployments. And then even though we had the Blackberries, it was only, my commander needed it, or, someone else needed it to be able to reach me at all times if we're running between,
Yeah,
different forward operating bases, or depending on where our soldiers were at, where our company was dispersed, and depending what missions we had. And so I actually miss being unreachable, being able to fully unplug, and not really unplugging because you're in a war zone.
yeah, yeah,
But I take that and I actually have to make sure I write in my calendar from weekly, daily, sometimes monthly, quarterly, annually, self care time. Whether it's I'm going on this vacation at this time, I'm blocking out this thing, even if I'm going nowhere, to be able to just take some time to pour into myself.
yeah,
I think that's very, very necessary For many of our veterans who are struggling in the post traumatic stress disorder, really taking that time to unplug and pour into our mental health is so important. Make sure we get outside, get green time,
Yes.
vitamin D, sunshine. And we look at the studies that shows us these things work, versus people who have lived in Alaska their whole lives and see half the
Right.
year in dark space and how that's detrimental to our mental health.
Yeah.
And so encompassing all of those things and all the research that shows us how to pour into ourselves, how to unplug, how to incorporate good day to day, affirmations, manifesting, positivity, all the things. I have to do it, otherwise I will be struggling heavily, like a lot of, unfortunately, my battle buddies.
Yes, yes, I agree with you. I do count us as the fortunate ones, but I love that in this space we can, in our own way, we're reaching back, right? It's that service that's instilled in us, and and that's basically why you do what you do and why I do what I do, because it's just inbred in us to serve, because we've experienced our own version of trauma, or our own version of our transition. And speaking for myself, just looking at how challenging it was for me, I'm like, how many other women, and I know men struggle too, but I, like I said, I focus on the females because we tend to be a lot more harder on ourselves, and we tend to really put ourselves last in a lot of things. So like I said, I really count us as the, not, we're not like exceptional, but we're part of that group of women that are trying to give back. So this I love this conversation. You and I could talk for hours. So your nonprofit has been impactful because of the economic support, the prevention education, and the health services you provide to those at risk or really affected by breast cancer. What are some of the most rewarding moments you've experienced through your work, and how has some of those moments reinforced your commitment to doing what you're doing?
Absolutely. Before the pandemic, we had a beautiful office. We had to close down in the pandemic, reducing overhead expenses and costs. And we used to have this gratitude wall. And so in this gratitude wall, we would post every single thank you. Not that we needed it, but it was really for the team to really go back and say, whatever you're feeling down or questioning what your purpose was or why you were here with I Will Survive Incorporated, take that time to just go look at that wall and read those thank you notes from the families, from the kids, from the husbands who, felt that we stood in the gap because he was focused on taking care of the children,
Yes.
or struggling himself to helping wife get to and from appointments, and read those cards. And this card wall was full from the sky down to the floor, in
Yeah.
our office. And anytime someone wasn't feeling great, as soon as they left, even just reading two or three of those cards, they felt fulfilled. Like, okay, I'm here. I'm grateful. Another piece, I remember visiting a survivor, single mom. Her son was 7 years old at the time. We were at Northside Hospital before the pandemic, where we could do hospital visits, so we didn't have that interruption of,
Right.
part of our mission. And so I remember, speaking with her before, and she's like, "Yeah, I just can't stand this hospital food." And so I went to go pick up some nutritious food from Whole Foods and their, all the great things they have. So it was like some fresh baked salmon, some fresh greens, and whatever carbs they had. So she had a full, balanced, nutritious meal, and drove up to Northside Hospital. And her son asked me, as I'm trying to feed his mom, she's very frail. Her stage was stage 3. It went to stage 4. She had some blood clots. Her cancer metastasized to her bones. She was
Yeah.
living with so much stuff.
Mm.
Um, Praise God, she's here today and cancer free. But her
Awesome.
son, at the moment, he asked me the hardest question I ever had: is my mom going to die?
Oh,
This is before I became a mom, and so I'm like, Lord, please help me answer this the right way I'm supposed to,
yeah.
without lying, but also having emotional intelligence and empathy in
Right.
place for a 7-year old.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what I said verbatim, but I remember him hugging me so tight
Mm.
with my answer. And I said, God, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. As I'm almost about to shed tears
Yeah.
because this moment really, really hit. Because I lost my mom, and he's very
Yeah.
close to the age I lost her. And it was just like, it was one of the hardest cases we ever had. And the
Mm.
fact that she's still here brings me so much joy. She became a first time author this year and helping her publish her book and helping
Wow.
books now. And so seeing it full circle, I think those moments really bring us back full circle. Like, this is why we're doing what we're doing. This is why our organization matters. This is why our programs are critical and need funding to support and continue to do the work we're doing. So yes, those are great moments.
Yeah. I love that. I can see like your energy, your excitement, and just the, that's your baby. And one of the things you talked about, which I think a lot of times we tend to forget the caretakers, right? We tend to forget to check in with them. And even the supporters, like you say, sometimes we question, am I doing the right thing? So, like, is this where I'm really supposed to be? So that gratitude wall that you talk about, it really is so powerful. It's a simple thing, but like you said, just reading one note can really reinforce, okay, this is why I'm here, this is why I'm doing this, and get you right. Because you get tired too, right? You get tired because you're taking on a lot. Your assistant, your employers, your employees are taking on, all of that. So it's good to, I like that you have a gratitude wall, and just another way to help them understand that, look, you're in the right place at the right time, and you're helping so many more people that need it. Wow,
Mhm.
this is so amazing. All right, so living unapologetically is at the heart of this podcast. Anisa, how do you live unapologetically in your work and your personal life? And what advice would you give our listeners striving to embrace their true selves and live unapologetically as well, especially our veterans?
Yes, living unapologetically. I love the name of this podcast, Renee.
Thank
It's
you.
phenomenal. So thankful for you and the work that you're doing. But yes, I think for me, living unapologetically is, um, I'll start with my mom. The greatest quote she ever gave me before she passed, excuse me, was no matter what you do, be a good person. And so we try to incorporate that in every single thing, that we're doing. And I like to reference the late, great Congressman John Lewis as well. Getting
Yeah.
into good trouble, living unapologetically is getting into good trouble,
Yeah.
You don't want to do the bad trouble. You don't want to deal
Yeah.
with people in, toxic environments, whether through food, through, the earth,
Exactly.
fortunately, and all the damage that we have done as humans to our earth. Um, but the good trouble to see a hole, fill a hole, wherever we can, and to find purpose in it so that we are, kind of that hole, putting on that oxygen mask first
Yeah.
before we're able to really pour heavily into others in the service space. I think it's critical, to a part of
Yeah.
living unapologetically.
Yeah, I know. For me, the most impactful, well, the most impactful message that I heard was from John Maxwell, and it's about adding value, which is, kind of similar. So, and I think that's why we're in the space we're in, because we're always trying to seek things that's much bigger than us. We find ourselves in spaces we're like, how did I get here? But we're supposed to be there, right?
Hmm.
knows. So he's laid the path. We just have to follow.
Yeah.
A lot of you hear about being authentic, and everybody's trying to live authentically. What does that look like for you? And and how does that authentic living, and it's kind of aligned with living unapologetically, but sometimes that you can kind of misrepresent that. So, what does authentic living mean to you as well? I'd like to ask that.
For me, authenticity and living in that vibration, it's 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 really living to me from the soul in essence, fully no clothes on, nothing to cover up, no mask. Being
Yeah.
your authentic self is in the raw. Everything
Yeah.
in the raw. Some people use it to me, the third eye or the first eye, depending on which
Yes.
group you're working with, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I used to get told when I first moved to Atlanta, I want to see. I used to always have my head down. I always used to look down. I didn't have confidence. I was working on my self esteem, and it's like I want to see in your eyes. And I say, why? I say, well, the eyes are the windows to the soul. I'm able to
Hmm.
actually see you if I can see into your eyes.
Yeah.
And so I looked at it as I don't want anybody to see me. I don't want you to see me. I don't want you to look in my eyes. I don't. And that was my way of hiding myself
Hmm.
because I'm scared of so many things. I had so much trauma before I moved to Atlanta and just being scared.
Hmm.
And I learned that, we have to remove the fears to live, authentically. And if people don't like you or people don't, appreciate who you are, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
you
You know,
know, it took a
I find
while
that.
to get to that point.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny because when I first came to this country, I used to do the same thing. I walked with but you said something that's really pivotal. It's also because a lot of the trauma that we deal with, we don't get to express what those feelings are, right? And then with our culture, it's not a thing that we do, right? Because we don't have the it's not something that we do. So and this goes back to me saying I feel like we're a part of the fortunate group, especially being
Mhm.
immigrants. You we get to understand you need support, you need to speak, you need to really figure out who you are because all of that has been distorted in some way. Sometimes it's by people you trust, family. So, you're literally trying to rebuild, and this speaks to our service in the military, the amount of transitions that we go through. Coming from the island is a transition.
Mhm.
To a new country, it's a transition. Enlisted in the army is a transition. In the army, you have to transition to their system. So you, as an individual, and this is why everybody's walk, you have to just respect it, right? You have to respect it because you really don't know how big their shoes are, how small it is. You don't know. So hold on. So it's like, hold on. So it's one of those things where you do have to embrace the transition as it comes because it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. And we can talk about the transition from the islands and trauma and all of that. That's a whole nother gamut.
Yes.
Let's not go there because this wouldn't stop. But I do really appreciate you sharing, just even tapping into it a little bit. You know, you mentioned health equity, and I'm understanding that it's a tie into prevention and just wanting people to embrace. Okay, this is a thing we need to figure out how to figure it out, work with it, and cure it if we can catch it when it's early. How do you incorporate, or what do you do as far as health equity? How do you educate people? Are you actually incorporating fitness, nutrition, and all of that? So tell us a little bit about how that ties into what you're doing.
Absolutely. Health equity for us is also paying attention to our medical team, the client's medical team, to ensure that they have a patient centered approach versus that kind of blind, masses approach on the treatment process. So typically it's the surgery, chemo, radiation, and different variations of that. If you do a lumpectomy, removing a small tumor, with a small amount of breast tissue to a mastectomy, removing a mass breast tissue with a tumor, or a double mastectomy to remove double breast hair with tumors and some that had spread to lymph nodes, various underneath the arms and other places. For us, having that conversation with the client is important. The bedside manners, and so if you're in a zip code that has more access, if you will, to better treatment options, better conversations, better bedside manners. We can't have that. There's a good article out there called Bankhead to Buckhead, and it really goes into differentiation pieces of how access, whether it's education, to health systems, to affordable housing options, everyone should have access to these things, not
Yeah.
just the people who live in certain zip codes.
Right.
And so for us, it's educating on all stakeholders, whether it's the health systems from North Side to Piedmont and Henry County to different political leaders within the various municipalities across the Atlanta region to every single person involved. I think in this decision making process, everyone needs to have a seat at the table, and we
Yeah.
found with equity, a lot of low income or disadvantaged communities weren't invited to have a seat at the table,
Mm.
and so we said, well, we'll speak for the voiceless. In
Yeah.
order to have to have trust within the community. We have to be our authentic selves as a
Yeah.
nonprofit to build that trust so that we can speak on their behalf on, hey, this isn't working. We
Yeah.
need better. We need to demand better care, better
Yeah.
treatment, better access. And so we were doing that, which
Yeah.
helps a lot.
Yeah. You know what? As you were talking, this question came to me. Homelessness, veteran homelessness is a big, big problem, right? What what is the statistics of veterans that you serve, and are there more homeless veterans? And I don't know if you have that number. This is just a question that I'm asking in case you do. But what is the statistics of that, the veterans versus homeless veterans? And do you even is that something that you keep track of, that you're really monitoring?
We haven't monitored it closely, and I'll tell you why. So, Georgia's not a high homeless veteran population state.
Okay.
California is. Virginia
Yes.
used to be. Virginia's numbers actually got down to zero. It's one of three states that zero, yes. And it's impressive because we're trying to identify how we can replicate some of the models when it comes to our survivors because we deal with veteran and non veteran families battling
Yeah.
breast cancer. And so for us, with the veteran families that are battling breast cancer, identifying what resources they have. And so, if a veteran is diagnosed with breast cancer, was there risk exposure while during deployments?
Right.
And so then they're 100% covered on their treatment options. And a lot
Yeah.
of veterans don't know that. And so it's our job to educate our communities to make sure that they know of all of their resources. So they
Yeah.
do not have to battle in silence. They do not have to, work in silos, using us as a nonprofit partner to help
Yeah.
in their battle, but also plugging them into all the resources through the Veterans Administration and all the veterans resources that are out there within the veterans community.
Yeah. The before I started doing I'm studying now, and just realizing how many veterans, even just outside of my studies, which led me to some of the information that I do have now. I didn't realize how many veterans don't really know that there's resources for them, or they don't have the access, or they think they don't have the access. And it's because of miseducation, right? Because they're
Mm-hmm.
not being led. And it's twofold. I think it's twofold. Some of it does take you making an effort to find the information. And then there's so much negative stigma around the veterans affairs. Some of it may be truthful, but I feel personally, I feel like they're really trying, they're making a much better effort, especially when it comes to women's health. The fact is there's a lot more veteran than there are people to support them. That's the main fact, which is why organizations such as yourself, I Will Survive Inc., DSP Waypoint, that's why these organizations are here. Like, we're that plug, right? We're that fill the gap. We're filling in the gap, trying to plug into bigger resources so we can say, hey, send them our way, or we'll send them your way. But it's the education piece, the lack of knowledge, why many veterans just are still without the support that they need. So, like, I'm going to keep saying this, Anisa, kudos to everything that you're doing, and all those, nonprofits that are there trying to support our communities. It's a big shoe to fill. It really is, but it's very rewarding. Just me being a part of one. I sometimes sit and I'm like, I'll be a part of this one too. I'll be a part of this one too. But you can only do so much, right? Because you do have to come back to your own health, your own, making sure you're able to support, you guys support yourself so that you can support others. So thank you. I just love everything that you're doing. All right, so coming to a close, I want to thank you so much, Anisa, for sharing your journey and your insights with us today, for just, giving us a little bit more of who you are and what you do. Seeing how you live unapologetically and honor your mother's legacy through such meaningful work is truly, truly, truly inspiring. So, with that, how can our viewers connect with you? How can they find you?
Yes, please connect with me. I'm on LinkedIn, Anisa Palmer. My Instagram is the Anisa Palmer. Someone else got Anisa Palmer first. And also on Facebook, Anisa Palmer. If you want to connect with the charity, I will survive Inc.org, and the charity's all over social media as well.
One thing you didn't talk about, Anisa, is your book. A bit about your book. I
Yes.
forgot to ask about that. She has a book, everyone. So tell us where we can find the book and kind of just go get into a little bit what inspired you to write the book.
Yes, absolutely. So the first book came out in 2019, and it's called Purpose, the Ultimate Climax. And I wrote this book because I found so many people that weren't living in their purpose, but also um, were dealing with a lot of burnout. And so
Yeah,
I think it was a game changer to help from folks who are reading it and purchased it all across the United States and the Caribbean, Canada, India,
nice.
and the messages they shared on how it has been able to impact their lives.
Yeah,
So I'm glad I followed into it to write it, and folks can purchase it on Amazon or on my website. And then the second book I wrote called Nonprofit Success Blueprints, and it's
mhm,
really just being in the nonprofit space for as long as I've been, and seeing different nuances that have changed when it comes to federal laws, to state laws, and how in my consulting business I'm able to help nonprofits really help, whether it's mission drifting and how to avoid that, but
yeah.
also collaborative efforts and partnerships. We like to use a lot of private public partnerships. And so that book's also available on Amazon or on my website as well.
Yes, we'll make sure it's in the notes too. I'll make sure all your contact information is in the notes. So tell everyone again where they can reach you, because I did kind of cover that up with your your book stuff. So tell them again where they can reach you, because I want
Yes,
them to find you.
yes, absolutely. Please contact me. PalmerFirmGroup.com is my website where I do a lot of consulting and all the books are there. And then I, can connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram, the Anisa Palmer, Facebook, Anisa Palmer, and then for the charity, I will survive Inc.org, and we're all over social media as well.
Thank you, Anisa. Thank you for joining us today. And to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in to Living Unapologetically Beyond the Uniform. If today's episode inspired you, please like, share, and pass this along to other veterans who could benefit from these conversations. Remember to join me live every Friday at 11 a.m. for more stories and insights that empower you to live boldly and thrive beyond the uniform. Until next time, keep living unapologetically.